Please. All right. To call this meeting of the Board of Commissioners to order. It is January 31st. The time is 9 a.m. We are on time. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. Okay, are there any comments for items not on this agenda? Anybody? Looks like everybody's here for the agenda. Next, we have a motion to approve the minutes of January 24th.
So moved.
I'll second that. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion carries. Next up, we have representatives from Polk County's Family and Community Outreach. We have Brent DeMoe, Amber Kramer, Stephanie Gilbert, Dana Goodale. Please join us. And I'll just say in the packet is a comprehensive update from every program, I believe, at FCO, but we've decided to space out some of your presentations so we can get a deeper dive into the programs rather than a full overview.
I see that there's nothing on the agenda. We're the only thing that you did.
Okay, I do have an imaginary gavel, just so you know,
You have an actual one back there.
if we need it.
That was my sense of humor. Commissioners, thank you very much for having us. Brent DeMoe, Director of the Family Department. We did email you guys a very comprehensive 6-month, sort of a half-year review. We do a lot of things in our department. I also understand that if we tried to update you on everything, likely would take several hours. So at the chair's request, we're picking about 3 programs at a time. And if you want us to come back in subsequent months, we'll highlight some of those other programs. But these were the 3 that I thought were most pertinent to what's happening right now. I'm a big fan of letting the people who run these programs talk about the successes and their plans. So we're each just going to take a few minutes. We're not going to go over everything that we sent y'all. We're going to hit some highlights that we thought would be worth talking about. And then we are absolutely open to questions and discussions about anything you guys want to talk about. So I think Dana is going to go first. Dana supervises all of our school-based mental health programs. And okay.
Good morning. So quick little update, I guess, about school-based mental health, new additions. So this academic year, we were fortunate enough to reinstate or bring back a contract with Fall City School District. So we have a therapist stationed out there, which has been really, really helpful, just in building that connection with the community. And we also are starting a new contract with Kings Valley Charter School starting next Monday, which will be great. So 70% of their students come from Dallas, Monmouth, Independence. It's 2 full bus loads of kids that take the bus every day out there. So I had been working with the Dean of Students out there frequently of just about staffing and threat assessments and just needs that they're seeing for their students. But because of their location, students were not able to access services. I think they're out there. So they are really, really excited about having a school-based mental health representative out there. Other new stuff for this year, we last year added on 2 kind of school-based resource connector focused positions, one in Central and one in Dallas we started them focusing on all the schools to help be more of that bridge between the actual resource connectors and the resource center and the school-based team. So they participate on like the Thursday morning meetings and know more about funding streams and have helped be a bridge for that. We're adjusting it a little bit, and those 2 positions for this next 6 months or so of the school year are going to be stationed in they're going to split their time between 2 schools in each of the districts. So Talmadge Middle School and Independence Elementary School, and then Oakdale Elementary School here in Dallas and Lockgrail Middle School. And just because we are seeing that there was an opportunity to get more directly involved with students that they hadn't yet had by maybe being based at the resource center or the annex. So they're going to be participating more in like co-facilitating groups and hopefully more parent nights and just, we have found that being in the school makes a world of a difference in those positive relationships that we can build with students and families, and physically being there at drop off every day and waving to parents is huge. So, so those are two kind of staff updates. This year, we really got back, and I talked about it in the update, to more of a kind of clinical type focus and short-term solution focus. Like, we're going to set goals with students. We're going to meet with them for maybe 6 to 8 weeks, and then hopefully get them off of our caseload and able to maintain those skills in the classroom, so that we can bring more kids in, because we're seeing such a high number of referrals. We just cannot staff all of them. So far this year, that's been really successful. I think staff feel good about their ability and their intention of working with kids on a specific goal to help them be successful in school. And we're able to move more students through and serve more students. So that's been really positive. Also, like countywide, we've had a much more positive relationship with Polk County Behavioral Health, especially in the Central School District. They are behavioral health therapists are referring students to the school-based mental health people at like Talmadge Middle School and Central High School for that ongoing connection, which has been really great. We haven't seen that in a long time. So kudos to the therapists who are helping to wrap around those students. What else? Just a bunch of, I tried to highlight successes and stories, which is, I think, the fun stuff in what we do. And it's hard to put into words or numbers the fact that, like, our students at one of our middle schoolers who we were frequently working with last year are no longer reaching out and seeing the school-based mental health therapist on a regular basis, which we are checking in with them, and they're saying that they're able to maintain their skills that they have learned last year and be successful in school, which is what we want. We don't want kids to have to see us. We want to work ourselves out of a job. So that's been really positive. I think that's kind of the big kind of core thing. So any questions about specifics or anything on the update? Love to answer.
Yeah. Excuse me. So thank you for the report, and it will be great for those who will read it. I'm interested. There's a lot of things happening in our world, in our society, in this country that I think stem from how our kids are interacting with each other, and certainly interacting with the rest of the community as they're growing up, and social media, which I'm going to touch on. But can you describe briefly for me what a day in the life of a school-based mental health counselor looks like?
Yes. It's so different at every school. I think I'll just pick one. Let's say our staff person at any of the Lyle or Oakdale here in Dallas, the K-3 schools. Oftentimes we're there. Our staff show up in between 7 and 7:30, so they're ready. They get their day going. They check emails. We're there at bus drop off when students are there to greet them coming in. I was just talking with someone the other day about, we were staffing a student and she was like, he gives the best bear hugs that you will ever get from a second grader, like just coming in. So being there, being that positive presence in students' lives, greeting them when they come in. And then we have kind of our students that are on our list to see for the day, our kids that we see maybe every Tuesday, and we try and get to those kids. But then there's also crises that come up. So a student who is having a big blowout or physically doesn't want to come into the school because they don't want to get out of their parents' car, oftentimes we'll go into the parking lot and help them come out, have a conversation, give them a safe place to come into our office, kind of ease into the morning. So all of the staff, I will say, have a plan of, okay, I'm doing these 2 anxiety groups today. I have these 6 kids that I'm going to meet with. I'm doing this presentation in Mrs. Jones' class. And that's our set day, but then things always pop up. So I think the need to be flexible is huge. And I think one of the key characteristics of the staff that we have on the team is their willingness to hold all of those things in their brain at the same time and know that, hey, we still need to connect with this kid, even though a crisis comes up. So A lot of planned, we're looking at our schedule when we come in, but then you just never know who's gonna bring what in their backpack or who's gonna say what in class. That's gonna rise to like, we need to check in with this student right now or do a debrief in this classroom because a student had a really big behavior. So it's a little bit of everything. We can plan, we do our best to plan, but also the willingness to be flexible. Go with the
So
flow.
it sounds like generally a very full day
Yes,
for every counselor.
yes. Yeah.
Am I using the right term by saying that?
Therapists, we have some of our, it just depends, like Sloan at Lyle, she has, she sees 9 or 10 students in a day, like back to back to back to back. That is what works best for her. Angela prefers maybe to have 4 or 5 students scheduled, knowing that she's gonna fill her day with all those other needs that come in, the check-in, check-out, the crying student in the hallway, all that stuff. So most of our team is back to back to back
And
all day.
a student gets on their list how?
A bunch of different ways. So either a parent can call and refer. If they're working with the resource center or the VSO or a therapist, a counselor with behavioral health, they can call and refer. Or a staff member at the school. Typically will say, hey, it's, you know, so-and-so seems really sleepy when they come in. They're kind of checked out for the first hour of school. Can you talk with them and see what's going on at home? Or a student can self-refer. We don't typically see that much at elementary. But middle and high school, we see it a lot, especially that word of mouth where some, let's say 8th grader had a really positive success with Katie Finley, our therapist out there. And then they tell their friends like, hey, she really helped me, or, you know, we did this group. And so it's kind of that word of mouth. But so self-referral, teachers, staff, parents, those are kind of the main ones.
And then so this morning, I'm listening to discussions and national news and from the Surgeon General specific to social media access.
Mhm.
And the Surgeon General saying you should not be letting your children have access to any social media
Mhm.
platforms
Mhm.
until they're at least 16. I really do believe in that, and I know how easy it can be
Yes.
to become addicted to those things and the devices. So the question I have is, and this is a global problem, but seriously a problem in the United States. And I think that any of us who've been around a while can see that this is a dynamic that has happened, at least over my lifetime. I can tell you 40, 50 years ago,
Mm.
I was 16. This wasn't an issue. And we didn't have all of your teams in the
Mhm.
schools. And we didn't have as many challenges. We had challenges, of course. We're just human. But I guess the question is, what's the training? What's the conversation? What's the kind of outlook for intervening in social media and the disruptors in our young students' lives
Yeah.
that are now, I think, requiring that we have more intervention?
Mhm. It is ever present that I think 50 years ago, you had a bully or you had an interaction at school that was negative and you go home and you got away from it. Like they're not going to call your home line and talk to your parents. You know, you could physically distance yourself from it. Now you can't. It follows you and you're everywhere. And so that distress tolerance of students being able to handle challenging situations, the challenging situations continue to follow them, which is really hard. So, and we are seeing more and more students who are saying really terrible things on social media or chats that they are not realizing what they're saying, like threats or threats of harm to themselves or to others that they will say they're just joking. But it's just so, I think when your phone is there, there's that separation of, you say a lot more things that you wouldn't say to someone to their
They believe
face.
it's a firewall.
Yes, yeah, very much so. So I think a lot of training for parents, I feel like a website, commonsensemedia.org is something that I tell parents about all the time. Commonsensemedia.org.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's where you could go on and you can say, you can look up what is Discord, what is Rainbow Friends, what are all these things that my kids are talking, what is Roblox, what are all these things that my kids are talking about that you hear from elementary school kids, and figure out, is this a healthy thing they should be engaging in? Is it not? Is it an open chat room? I have an 8-year-old, what is an appropriate game for them to be playing? So it really gives a lot of guidelines for parents and helps parents to figure out it's like step by step, how do I turn off the Wi-Fi on my kid's phone at night? How do I turn off the Wi-Fi in our home at night? How do I provide those safeguards for them when their brain is not able to do it for themselves? So a lot of talking with staff too and presentations this year about how bullying looks different, how that interpersonal relationships look different because we're not seeing it. It's all happening on their phone. And so teaching and support for staff on how to recognize it. What does it look like? How it looks different than it did even 5 years ago. And kids younger and younger and younger are having access to cell phones or video games and stuff where this is happening. So a lot of coaching for parents, a lot of coaching for staff, coaching for us as a school-based team as well on attending trainings on what are we looking at. So we know when people ask us. We also connect with Liberty and Juliet's house a lot to come in and do safety trainings with the lens of students being victimized and taken advantage of in more of a sexual way, coming in and to talk with staff and parents about what to look for. So Liberty House does a really good job on that, and we let them come in and do that. So we help school districts set that up for their teams. So
I think also that it's important, so I'm doing a lot of this for the record, so that anybody that will watch can glean more from, because they may not know that you all exist in our schools. I think it's important also to address the support from the school districts in the county for what you're doing and the fact that they're paying for this.
yes.
And so, and elaborate, excuse me, if you would, a little bit on that and what you see as the future for this program going forward.
Thanks for the opportunity. I think that this program truly would not exist without the partnership of the local school districts. They are inviting us into their space, which is a huge privilege to come in and work with their students in the buildings and have a dedicated office there, have shared access to forms and, student information. We would not be able to do it without their partnership and realizing that this is something that students need. So yeah, the districts do pay towards the cost of staff. They provide space and they invite us. We are on the care team meetings, the student intervention team meetings. It is a pretty appropriately fluid relationship, barring confidentiality. But just a really open, our staff often say that they feel more a part of their school team than they do the FCO team because they are there every day. That is where they report to work. So it's been a lot of that trust building, honestly, trust on the school district's part that we are going to do right by the students. And it's been, really fortunate that the program has continued to grow and expand so much. And I think looking at the needs that we're seeing, we are always having conversations with districts about cost and what would it look like to have 2 staff in every building or, more of these resource positions instead of just how can we hire more people so that every school can have maybe a therapist and a resource connector. So conversations are always ongoing.
We just happened to have looked at the data. We just surveyed 1,000 high school kids in Polk County and asked them a variety of questions about youth programming, barriers to programming. But one of the other questions we asked is access to social media. So I just looked really quickly. This is preliminary data, but 60% of the kids use Instagram in high school, 12% TikTok, and 20% Snapchat. So just giving you some actual Polk County numbers for high school students in Polk County on what they're using.
Well, thanks so much for your presentation, Dana. And it's pretty neat to come into my position, having seen this program already up and running, and just that the county saw a need that wasn't being filled, and that you filled that gap. And all the partnerships that were required at each school district and each school to really get this program to thrive. So exciting. And I also want to thank you for the opportunity to visit Talmadge and visit the program. I was blown away by the integration of our school-based mental health therapists in the whole school. Everybody's talking to everybody. It's truly collaborative. And I was able to sit in on a boys group therapy session, and I was doing everything I could to keep it together. Because just to see these kids open up about just everyday anxieties, concerns, how open they were, and that they got to have that space away from the demands of the school day and whatever's going on at home to talk about that. I can't tell you what that would have done for me if that was available to me as a young boy who had challenges as well. So I just can't say enough about this program. I do have a question about the resource connector integration. How would it happen where a student, but it sounds like you're in close contact with parents, so there's communication there. But how would a resource connector notice that, hey, I think this child or this family does have a need that maybe not be folks may not be aware of? How would that process work? Or it might happen a number of ways, but
So a lot of the referrals for the school-based resource connectors come directly from the therapists, the school-based mental health therapists on site, because they are in those conversations with students, they'll hear
okay.
that they just moved or that they are going back. And we had a multidisciplinary team meeting yesterday focusing on supporting a student, and parents weren't able to attend because they didn't have transportation, which is really unfortunate because parents' voice in those, like, we really, really wanted mom there. And so we walked away from that meeting. Angela, the therapist, and I, the therapist at the school, saying, okay, this is a family that we need to connect with Tori, a resource connector, because mom really wants behavioral health support. She's like, I want my kid to get enrolled at the academy building, but she can't do that. So we can take our Chromebook and go out to mom's house and sit with her and fill out the paperwork and talk through resources. So those kind of things, I think when they come up at team meetings, a lot of it is, we've seen this student wearing the same shoes that are put together with duct tape and they need some new shoes. And so then that referral comes to our resource connector and they work on it so that it's not busy work, but those like steps of things that there are steps that need to happen before someone gets the resources, they can do it and not take time away from the therapist to see all that list of students for the day. So I'll say 90% of the time, the referrals come from the therapist in the building who knows the family and knows the students. They also come from school resource officers, admin, folks like that, who also may be privy. Maybe if law enforcement visited the family the previous night before and recognized that they need a food box or their heat was shut off, then they reach out to us and we make those connections with whoever is most appropriate. So.
Right.
Mhm.
I think one of the other piece of evidence that this program is working is the demand to expand and to have more therapists in each school. And it was interesting to hear about your kind of new case plan implementation.
Yeah.
Are there any concerns with the demand for growth? And
Yeah.
what does that look like? I mean,
There are definitely students that we have this plan that we're going to meet with them for 6 to 8 weeks, and that is not enough. We have students that have been on our caseload for the past 3 years because that is what the students need, and maybe they are involved in wraparound services or they aren't, or so much going on in this kid's life. So best intentions, we have this like goal that we're working towards for a couple of weeks and then move on to something else. But we realize that is not going to meet every student's needs. And so if that is the case, we just maybe pick a new goal to work with them on, or we realize that the student, we can kind of step down to seeing them every other week or maybe once a month, or just be that positive person who greets them in the morning and that 5 minutes of time instead of maybe a half an hour later in the day. That half an hour can be used to see another student. So there are always concerns. I think if we had more staff, we would still be full.
Mhm.
That's just how it is.
Yeah.
Because we're doing the best we can, but there are a lot of referrals coming through. So
It's a balance for sure. I mean, the school-based mental health program right now, our contracts this year of $1.1 million to pay for the staff that we have. Increasing staff is a great thing, but you have to make sure it's sustainable. And a
Right.
lot of districts right now are flush because they have some extra money, but we're not going to add staff if that's not going to be here 3 years from now. So We're entering into our negotiations right now with each district and talking about plans and steady increase. And also Dana by herself supervises all of these staff alone. And so if we increase staffing, we have to have more supervision with her because Dana is talking a lot about the positives and there is a ton of positives. But if she really got into the numbers of how many suicide screenings and different things that we're seeing in the first 6 months of the school year, and they've exceeded the entire school year last year, those things are tough for one person to deal with. So I'm always cognizant that we have to have the right kind of management and supervision. So we're doing the best job that we can. And so Dana stays working for me for another 27 years.
Yes, don't burn out.
I know. We have 16 people on the school-based team, not including me. So that's a lot to supervise. Thinking that they all have a couple hundred students at least. So, and the need, kind of like you talked about, Commissioner Pope, was there are more threat assessments this year. There are more suicide screenings. I can talk about those at a different update, but I wanted to keep this one positive, but the need is there. Like in the last week, I sit on the level 2 threat assessment team. I've been to 3, which is a lot. So that need for me too, being called in different directions, not only to supervise my core team, but then to respond to those big things that happen district wide. So.
And then finally, I know we're really time sensitive here, but maybe not. But
That's your meeting.
Thank you for the indulgence because this, to your point, this gives us a chance to take a little deeper dive on each one of the elements of your presentation that brings me to asking questions that I haven't thought of asking before, some for me, some for the public. But specific to $1.1 million, where does all that money come from? And additionally, who's advocating for more?
Yeah.
And how can we all join in that? Because in order to get you more help and we clearly can see, again, our most precious resource needs this attention.
Yeah.
And again, we all complain about the challenges, the problems of our society and societal problems, and we're not touching on the negative pieces at all here. We know they exist. We need more help. So how do we get the money? How do we get more?
Yeah. You want to take that one?
Just a couple of quick answers. So 100% of the funding comes from the school district and it does cover staff costs at the schools. The county is gracious in making sure that supervision from myself and Dana is covered, the majority of that by the county. But that 1.1 million is coming from the schools. I think your question is more specific. What budget category are they using? I will say this program has existed for 26 years in Polk County. I'll also say out of 36 counties, this is a very unique program. The thing that makes it unique is that we don't bill insurance and we don't care if you have insurance. The districts pay for our staff time regardless of if students are insured. There's only 2 other programs in Oregon that I know of where counties are providing staff in schools, but it is only for those folks that have the Oregon Health Plan and it's only for building services.
Yeah.
So it's unique in quite a few ways. The advocacy really is, there is no doubt every year we meet with every superintendent. We literally just met with one that said, I want 12 more staff. And we can't do that, nor can they promise to sustain that in 5 years, right? But that's what the need is. When you have one person in a high school with, Dallas has
800 maybe.
one person for 800 kids, very similar in Central. And even if you take a K-12 school like Perrydale, under 300 people there, but it's one person. So what they want and what they can get are definitely, there's a gap there. The advocacy part is really just encouraging schools that the traditional K-12 education part cannot be accomplished if the kind of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if those things aren't met with families and kids, they're not going to come to school ready to learn and they're not going to be paying attention. The students have a lot of need in general and post-COVID. So we're working with the districts to try to increase that staffing as long as it's sustainable. We can always have conversations at budget time if the county is interested in doing more like that. We try to shy away from grant funding and things because we want to keep our staff. That's the core of the program, is that some of these staff have been here a long time. How many for you?
Oh, I'd say the average time on our team is right now probably 4 years. That staff
And
have
you've
been
been here starting as a staff person in the schools.
Yeah, I've been here for 10. So
And we just hired a new therapist, correct?
we hired a new associate we'll be
Associate.
out at Kings Valley. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
And how many other positions do you have open?
1 at Lockrell.
Okay.
Yeah.
To Craig's point, maybe when we do our visits, we can talk about does ODE have special budget
Yeah.
assignments for these programs, and to talk to our superintendents about how we can be co-advocates for this kind of
Just think
thing.
about what a district needs. They need more teachers. They need more special ed. They need.
Need
more
everything.
everything.
Yeah.
They need more mental health. too.
Yeah.
Commissioner Pope, I extended an invitation via email if you'd like to visit one of Dana's programs firsthand and actually see it in action, similar to what Commissioner Gordon did last month. Just let me know and we'll find the best fit for your schedule.
Asked and answered.
Yeah.
You had me at hello. So I've always been a huge advocate for this program and everything that all of your teams do in the public health environment. It's important to do, but I guess the challenge we have is, I'm not naive to what school districts advocate for, and this isn't likely one of their top priorities. Not that it isn't important to them, I get it, but again, to your point, they have substantial needs that they're going to advocate for on the funding side. And so I think that maybe it's important that we start having a more succinct conversation with our representatives and senators about specific carve-outs for this kind of funding to school districts so that we can make sure that it is focused on this need and it is sustainable. Because otherwise we are at the mercy of a school district budget every year, and that is not sustainable. And we clearly all understand that the need is going to be ongoing. So.
And I will, I agree with everything you said. A little shift that I mentioned is the last 5 years negotiations, I would say superintendent and staffing level at districts have prioritized probably top 4 mental health needs for their students.
Good.
So I really wanted, it's what they're seeing, but also credit to the program for the work.
I feel fortunate every year when we have those conversations because they could choose to cut our program and hire another district staff, and they don't. And I think that speaks to the work that we do in the schools.
Since we've ran this program, I've ran it for 12 years. There has never been a staff decrease ever. And there's at least been one increase every year. So again, it speaks to the program. Can I transition us into the next part?
Yes.
I think one of the things that's unique about school-based mental health, and you'll hear this echoed when Stephanie talks about the resource center, is when districts do that 1.1 million contract with us and they're buying staff in the schools, they're not just buying a standalone program. It is connected to everything that not only FCO offers, but every county department, as we're also ingrained. So they're buying that expertise of all of the rest of the connection. And if you think about somebody like, we'll use Angela and Sloan since Dana used them as examples, when they're trying to work with a kiddo with real serious anxiety or mental health issues, the fact that they don't have to take the time to figure out how to help that family pay rent or get their utilities or get a tire for their car that blew out on the way to work, they don't have to use their time to do that. That's where the resource center comes in, which is the perfect segue to
Resource
Stephanie.
Lots going on at the Resource Center. So we are coming up on a year of being open in 2 locations. So our Monmouth location opened last March and is super busy. We've got 2 full-time staff out there. Our Resource Center team is up to 6 resource connectors that are dedicated to the Resource Center. And then we partner with both the VSO and school-based mental health to have that resource connector support across various programs. We bring all of those people together once a week to just talk about the various funding streams, whatever is changing and new in the resource world, which every week feels like it's your birthday at work because it changes so fast. What we've done with our resource connector team, kind of modeling after what we've done with school-based mental health and the VSO, is give each person on the team something that is their like specialty thing that they're doing while also making sure that they're cross-trained. Our phones never stop ringing, so everyone knows the basics of how to answer the phone and at least get people pointed in the right direction, how to sit at our front desk. We're a food pantry that's open 40 hours a week, so everyone knows how to go down and pack a food box and make sure that those things are being accounted for. Some of the things that our team is really focused on right now, obviously, is housing. There's huge housing needs. In October, we got a new contract partnership with West Valley Housing Authority to provide some light case management to folks who are in that voucher process. When you get your name on the voucher list, it can take up to 2 years for your name to come to the top of the list. And then when it finally gets there, you go to a meeting on a Wednesday afternoon and they run through all of the HUD requirements, all of the federal guidelines for housing. They tell you, your limits, all of the things that you need to know in like 1 hour. And then they say, go find a place to live. So our team now attends that meeting with every week, and they are there to offer support. Anybody who comes up on that list has access to that like case management from us. And that looks like sitting down and re-explaining some of those processes or breaking it down a little bit further, or even just talking about what other barriers, like you have this voucher, that's great, but you also have an eviction on your record, or maybe you have some criminal background. And so our team is able to work through what does it look like to overcome those barriers and get into sustainable housing. So we started in October. Since October, the Housing Authority had 14 of their voucher clients, what they call BSUP, so find a place to live. We case managed 11 of those, which is pretty incredible. All of our case management programs start out with this really slow start, which is fine. We're figuring it out. We're learning what to do. So we anticipate that will continue to grow with the number of folks that we're able to help. We also know that word of mouth is the way that programs are built. So when folks come and they meet with our team and we're able to help them through that process, they share that with their friends. And when those people then come up on the list, we're able to help.
To add something, I just want you to have, this is a real practical example of what it's like in Polk County. So this family gets a voucher and their rent's going to be paid for. Yay, that's great. They have to pay an application fee between $50 and $125 for every person over 18 in the house for every unit that they apply for. And sometimes you have to apply for 15 units before you get one.
Your voucher can't go towards those application
There's no
fees.
funding stream available to that family except through the resource center. Also, you found a place, they'll take your voucher, you paid all your fees, you get to move in, but because you have an eviction or a criminal background, or just because the landlord wants to, the deposit is $2,000 to move into that house, and that's before first month's rent.
Yeah.
There is no assistance through HUD to do that. All of that funding comes through the resource center, through other grants and partnerships that Stephanie has, mostly with community action funders. I tell this to you because just getting a voucher, it's almost just the first part, and having that navigation and that light case management for clients to then find somewhere. And we have relationships through our staff with most of the landlords in Polk County. So we're able to help plug people into the right place.
Our most recent list has about 50 families, I would say, that have an active voucher. They have 120 days from the day that their voucher becomes active to find a place. There's about 50 people on that list. And in 3 months, only 14 people were able to lease up. So it's finding housing is super, super challenging. Also, families who have that voucher, all of our programs, community action money, whatever it is that we're using, many of them have connections to HUD. And so that funding can't be used for first month's rent. And so for families to go out and find which exact right funding stream can help with that would be impossible. So our staff, they're well-versed in every funding stream. Families only have to tell that story one time, and they have that consistent support from somebody who can go out and find yeses, because when you go out and you apply for apartments and you're looking for funding and everyone's telling you no, it's really, really hard to get things in a place where you can be sustainable.
Especially after waiting 2 years to get that voucher. And then
Yeah.
the success rate before you had this contract with West Valley was probably very low to get these people connected to housing.
One of the challenges that housing has shared with us too is when you wait on a list for that long and you're moving around, clients are really mobile, phone numbers change, things change. So they finally make it to that top of the list. Housing tries to call, they send a letter, and the
Can't find
person may
them.
not be where they are. The advantage of being the resource center and the food pantry and we're a community mailbox, people are checking with us on a regular basis. So if we know that they're getting close to the top of that list, we can help support saying, hey, housing is looking for you. Get over there and get that packet turned in. What do you need help with? How can we support that? So our team does a lot of just reminding people even, hey, go over and update your phone number or go change your address, and just being supportive in that way, even before people make it to that 2-year mark.
So help me with this. I'm hearing we have a 28%, currently 28% success rate with our assistance, and wouldn't have that clearly if we weren't assisting. That there's a cost associated with that. And so the cost benefit I won't ask you for that number, but at some point I'm going to want to know how much are we spending for the success rate? How do we make that better? But what about, so you say 50 and we end up with 14. Why aren't those others getting closed?
I think a lot of it's just the ability to find a place that fits within the limits of a voucher. So if you are approved for a 2-bedroom voucher and maybe it's set at $1,500, if the rent for a place is set at $1,550, the client can't pay the difference in that rent. So that is just a no. And so we're seeing that there are very few.
If the doctor said 15.
Right, the government, the federal government will not allow you to pay $1 over what the voucher is, even if you have $1.
If you had, say, two folks who weren't able-bodied to really work a full-time job, but the son wants to move in and help supplement rent or something like that, there's no flexibility there.
It's also worth mentioning that a West Valley housing voucher is good in rural County.
Yep.
And the rental vacancy rate, according to the city managers at our last meeting, is less than 1% in rural County. So there's a lot of apartments in West Salem that now you have to fill out the Salem Housing Authority and get on their wait list. It's a whole different process, whole different paperwork. So the other thing that I will tell you is sort of in defense of the numbers. When we first got this contract in November, we weren't provided the lists of clients. We got our first list of clients last week, Wednesday. So that number of 50, we just got. So now we're able to actually communicate with those clients and say, here's the services that we offer. Before, it was just going to the weekly meeting and saying, we're here if you need us. And if those people want to help, they can connect with us. Now we're proactive about it. So we think that our numbers are going to increase by next quarter.
So I guess where I'm going with this is trying to have a better understanding. Sorry to segue here, but I think it's important to integrate some of these pieces in as we're talking so we can kind of understand. So we have a lot of dollars that the state and federal government want to throw out there, and somehow community-based organizations are going to figure out how it really matters. But here you are in a program that we can see numbers for. We know that there are successes, and you're challenged all the time with having enough financial resource, because that's what it takes. You need real money in order to be able to help pay these fees, et cetera, because that's what your team is doing. And so my frustration comes from all of these pie in the sky ideas about solving homelessness by just throwing money to community-based organizations. Sorry, I'm over characterizing, but here we have a great successful program that actually does matter, is helping. And this is what folks need. This is how it works. And so what is our strategy and I'm asking all of you, what is our strategy to access those dollars so that we can actually improve on and expand the programs that you're demonstrating?
This is where you guys come in. I mean, as far as our pay grade and what we could do, and she's only talking about one contract. The Department of Human Services just recently started contracting with us to provide housing navigation for folks that are on SNAP and TANF and any self-sufficiency program. It is not normal for case management from an organization like ours to help other agencies, be it state or quasi-government, do their work for them. But because we have access to all those other resources, we're perfectly aligned to do that. The part where you guys could help is there's nobody that knows that we do this. You are quite possibly the first people that have ever heard about this, past our department and the people that fund us. So the numbers are really good in both of those programs. The answer is really talking to lawmakers and decision makers about there's a different way to approach helping people. And the whole idea of family and community outreach, the one-stop shop, the place where you can come, you think you only need this, but you're going to leave with this. The ideas of co-location, all of those things, that's what people have to be thinking about. Because it's a real burden for families to go to 5 different buildings in Dallas just to get all of the things that they can get if they just opt for people.
Yeah.
Stephanie, heck,
Please state your phone number for the record.
I think one of the ways we're talking about funding, Resource Connector team has spent just shy of $400,000 helping meet client needs directly. So that is cash from our various funding streams. We have about 10 that we work with on a regular basis. That's rent, utilities, things related to employment, application deposits, whatever that is, helping get people through that process. One of the benefits of the way that we have it set up now too is in the past, when somebody came into even just our resource center in the very beginning, They came in, they talked to somebody and we said, yep, all 10 organizations are going to help you. Whoever it was that we were paying would then receive 10 separate checks in the mail at various times. And they got really, really tired of that. And so they started to say, hey, we're not going to work with the Resource Center. It's too much work to keep track of all of those various payments, and things would get confused and lost. So now we've partnered with all of these agencies to say, we're going to do all of the work. We're going to make sure that these things get paid, and then we're going to invoice you for the amount of our contract, so that our funder, or the people that we're funding, only have to get one payment as well, which makes them much, much more willing to work with us, and much more willing when we call and say, hey, we're working with this client, we need one more day to figure things out, that we get a lot more yeses that way. So that's something that has been a huge improvement on the way that we've done things within the Resource Center. Prior to COVID, we were spending about $79,000 to $80,000 annually on these needs. And now in just 6 months, we're at nearly $400,000. So the needs are much greater. Many of our funding streams too are starting to transition back to some of the pre-COVID guidelines that they had. So in the height of things, we were able to pay 18 months worth of rent for people through various programs through community action. Now they're really back to saying, hey, it needs to be 1 month of emergency rent so that we can show sustainability and get people back on a path forward. So we work really closely with community action on some of those things, but we're seeing deposits that are $5,000 or more for just one family. So those funds go quickly, and in each of those contracts. So we try to partner and use all of those funding streams so that that burden is any one particular funder.
Just as a quick number here, for the programs that are related to helping people in Polk County, especially rural Polk County, related to resource center stuff, we have about $900,000 in contracts, with the majority of that being cash to help families overcome barriers. Yep. Those come, like Stephanie said, from about 10 different.
In addition to that funding, we also work really closely with the Energy Assistance Program as a way of connecting families to a resource before they're in crisis. So one of the great things about Energy Assistance is you don't have to have a shut-off notice. You don't really have to even have an emergency necessarily. If you qualify financially, then it's something that is provided. We use that a lot of times to help people offset other costs so that they can help support their own things. So far this year, we've done about $105,000 in cash directly to energy, gas, heat, electric, and they run about 6 weeks behind. So we're right now is the season where we see a lot of those applications. Last year, we did about $350,000 in direct payments to clients in Polk County through that partnership as well. And it's a service that typically is only provided if you can get to Salem. So since we started partnering with Energy Assistance to offer that, they give us numbers all of the time. And 70% of all of the applications that we have sent in are people who have never accessed that service before, just showing that getting to Salem is a barrier for folks in Polk County. So we make sure that that happens for them. Anybody who comes in for any financial service or resource through us, we connect them to Energy, whether they have asked for it or not. So that's something that is just included in the package.
Thank you so much, Stephanie. To share with you, when I presented at Association of Oregon Counties about our homelessness prevention project, of course, part of our system is the resource center, and people are blown away. And I'm sure you've experienced this too. Like, how did you do this? And it's not something you can stand up instantly. It takes years and years of relationship building, trust building between agencies who are all kind of siloed for certain reasons. But to say, hey, our numbers, success rates can go up if we can sort of outsource some of the case management or some of the admin services or the connection services. I think everybody wins, and the taxpayer wins, because the money that we are devoting to these programs is actually helping people. And being leveraged across multiple programs. So this is the model, especially in rural areas where transportation and the ability to navigate these various programs is very difficult for people. So I have another question on the contract with the West Valley Housing Authority with the vouchers. So I'm going to be traveling to Washington, D.C. to meet with our federal delegation, partly to meet with our federal delegation through NACO. And I'd like to focus on these higher level federal barriers to to make sure these programs are actually helping people. So I may reach out to you with the laundry list.
Yeah.
Just to get, yep, that's bad. And if you could sort of rank them to see what is really affecting people. Because when I ask resource connectors and navigators, what the biggest request for service is, housing is at this locus of every problem, and it's a crisis. And it's so key to catch people before they become homeless, because the costs to get them rehoused are astronomical compared to the prevention, what we can achieve with the prevention model. So
I'll give you three quick ones.
okay.
All housing authorities are, they all have the exact same requirements. Why is there 700 applications depending on what housing you go to? One application for housing authority. That would be number one.
Mhm.
Number two would be there has to be flexible funds to help people get leased up. Application fees and deposits. If there's no money for that, what's the point of applying for a voucher?
Mhm.
Then number three is some sort of way to get housing authorities nice together. And I know it's more complicated than just saying play nice when you have a limited amount of vouchers, and if somebody uses the Salem voucher, but they do it in Polk County, county doesn't get money for it. I don't know how it all works, but if the plan is to house people and you have to do a Marion and a Salem and a West Valley just to find housing in the valley to try to even keep your kids in the same school, that's a barrier to balance.
Right.
But those are the top.
I appreciate that. And if these housing vouchers are not utilized because of really artificial barriers, we lose them,
Housing authority loses them if they don't come back next year.
which will have long-term implications for our homeless prevention efforts going forward. Yeah, I think when we look at our homelessness issue, we want some local autonomy, or we want to be empowered to deal with the problem at a local level, because that's where the relationships are. But without these higher level fixes at the federal level, it's very difficult. So I really appreciate that insight, and I think it really enriches the understanding of how complex it is to work with these folks. So anything else for the Resource Center or questions? Okay.
So we helped coordinate the holiday project again this year in partnership with the fairgrounds. This year was the biggest year that I know of. We served 1,200 families across Polk County, pretty evenly divided amongst all of our communities. We at the fairgrounds on the 22nd, we had over 700 families come through there to get their things for the holiday season.
During the ice storm,
Yeah.
we asked everybody to come by noon instead of till 6 o'clock at night. So it was a lot of fun.
It was very fun. So our volunteers were incredible.
But
Done back here.
No, it's a huge effort every year. There's about 100 volunteers that are involved at various stages of the project, whether that be calling families, delivering things when the weather gets really bad, shopping for kids who maybe we weren't able to match with a donor. We had about 200 various community groups or people who agreed to adopt a family this year and purchase those items. And then we raised about $7,000 in cash donations, which helped fill that gap as well. So what was really exciting, we were able to meet the needs of every child, which is about 3,200 kids, through those donations, our partnership with Toys for Tots, and then the adoption process that we've used for a long, long time. And then through our food program through Business Oregon, we were also able to provide food support to every family who signed up for the project who wasn't eligible for Dallas Christmas Cheer. Christmas Cheer serves Dallas, Rick Real, and Fall City. So we were able to meet the needs for food for Monmouth, Independence, and West Salem through that partnership as well.
And I know Stephanie did say this, but I want to say it more clearly. County funds aren't used for this program. This is donation and volunteer and partnerships with their entities. We're the coordinators of it, so our staff time and volunteer time. But other than that, it's supported by the community.
you've seen the need and the participation of families increase over the years. Yeah.
Increase, especially this year. Lots, and we anticipated that based on what we were seeing through the resource center. lots of family names that we hadn't seen before. There were names even that came through that in previous years had been donors that were
Yeah,
now on the
that's
list
great.
asking for assistance. So it was definitely a needed resource.
When I started in the county in 2009, we served 98 families. And what'd you serve?
1,200.
So there's been a little bit of growth and need.
Yeah. It's an incredible program and an incredible operation. I don't know how you put it all together, but it's like, it's amazing. It's incredible.
Amber Kramer is here. She's our service integration coordinator. And it's funny because I told them before y'all got here, listen, they're going to want to talk about point in time count and stuff. They're not going to want to talk about your guys' stuff. Let's go first. So we save Amber stuff. I see that we're creeping up on 10. I would like to suggest that we talk about service integration and what we're doing in Fall City at a different time, because I think what's more important is Amber's methodology and the numbers which was conducted last week. If we can just give you an update on that and entertain any questions, we could come back with a little bit more on those other two aspects of Amber's work. That would be my suggestion as we're nearing 10 o'clock. If you're good, we'll start with that. And
Your
if you-
schedule.
I have time.
Okay, I have time as well. And so it's up to you. It's
So
up to
we'll
you all.
start with point in time count and some of the efforts around that and see what happens with the clock.
Hi. So yeah, so like Brent said, we approach the point in time count a little bit differently this year. This is the first year that Family and Community Outreach has been directly involved in the coordination of rural Polk County's point in time count efforts. And we, in the past, the point in time count is conducted and was conducted this year through the HUD app Counting Us, which if you've ever used it before, it's really frustrating because if you stayed in a jail or a warming center, or maybe slept on a friend's couch or in a garage on the night of, this year it was January 23rd. So on the night of the point in time count question, you're deemed as not being homeless enough and the survey ends and doesn't allow you to continue to collect data on that person. So we decided that that wasn't good enough for us, and we wanted to know about everybody who's experiencing homelessness or housing insecurity in Polk County. So we created our own unique to rural Polk County jot form survey, which allowed us to continue the question beyond where did you sleep on the night of January 23rd. We even if somebody was housed in their own apartment or home that they rent or own on the night of the 23rd, we continue to ask them questions like, do you feel safe in that home? If they said yes, then the survey ended there. If they said no, we continued the survey because in our minds, that is at risk of being homeless. We implemented the survey in a number of different ways. The big one was our Polk County Community Connect. We took a 2-year hiatus because of COVID, and we were back this year. Dallas Evangelical Bible Church hosted us in their space, which was wonderful. And we had about 55 volunteers that day that helped us serve 294 people at the Community Connect. 47 service providers were there providing things like dental care, haircuts, every resource in Polk County that you could imagine. We had OHSU School of Nursing students there and free clinics providing medical screenings and some light medical services for people. We had a lot of food, and all of this was just a kind of incentive to get people through the door. And we did conduct a survey on every single person as their point of entry to come into the Connect. So and then in addition to the Community Connect, we also conducted a couple of days of street outreach. We attended every food distribution all over rural Polk County, from Grand Ronde, Independence, Monmouth, Dallas, Fall City. We had folks out there conducting the surveys. And then we also partnered with, I'm going to forget people. We partnered with local medical clinics, local businesses, all of the libraries, city staff, Polk County Corrections, Polk County Behavioral Health, Polk County Public Health to conduct the school district, school-based mental health, and McKinney-Vento liaisons to conduct our surveys with people that they're already working with, folks that they already have relationships with, people that they know may be experiencing barriers to housing. So in 2022, our count of unsheltered homeless in rural Polk County was 25 people. I don't think that was an accurate number just based on past methodology. This year we conducted 154 surveys. Our unsheltered homeless count was at 84. Our sheltered homeless, meaning that they're sleeping in transitional housing, that's the only thing that counts as sheltered homeless, would be 8. And then at risk of being homeless or in jail on the night of the count was 44 people.
I'd like to add a little bit about the methodology and why it's important. And I'll start with how typical urban areas do the point in time count. Typically, they recruit hundreds of volunteers who may or may not have had any experience working with the homeless whatsoever. They attend and this year it was a half-hour online video training that you watch. And then those folks descend upon well-established homeless camps and do the Counting Us app in a camp that might have 100 people. In rural Polk County, we don't have camps with hundreds of people. In fact, we hardly have any camps at all. So how do you find folks that are homeless when there is no place to camp? Code enforcement is moving folks around. So there's 2 ways that you do that. The first way is you have an event that provides all of the services that somebody might need, including food, and provide transportation, which Amber did as well from 6 different locations in rural Polk County. And you get everybody to a spot where you're providing that great service, you're doing some prevention work, and you're also able to do the count there. The other part is by using service providers who already have relationship with those experiencing the homeless or that are at risk. It's not a stranger walking up, "Hi, you look very homeless there. Can I ask you some questions about how homeless you are?" But if it's your parole officer or your behavioral health therapist or law enforcement that talks to you all the time, that relationship is established. And that was a unique thing that we implemented this year. And we saw the fruits of those numbers. For the rest of the folks that do the point in time count, there's a delay between a month and 3 months before they even see their data because they're relying on the HUD system. The system that Amber did, we have that data, we have contact information, we're able to deploy staff and connect with those people starting tomorrow. And then we did enter all the pertinent information into the HUD required app, so they have what they need, but we retain our data, which is why there's no other place in Oregon that's giving data like you're getting today, less than a week after the time.
I think something else just important to note, a lot of the things that we've been hearing in the homelessness prevention meetings, there's concern from some people that the services that are being provided in Polk County are attracting people who are experiencing homelessness from other areas. So one of the questions we asked is, if you're experiencing homelessness in the area that you're currently in, do you have ties to those communities? And overwhelmingly, it was, I think the lowest was 67% in Willamina have ties to that community, but over 80% and 100% specifically in Grand Ronde have current ties to those communities.
The majority of folks that people will see, whether it's in Dallas, Monmouth, or Independence, if you see that person with the shopping cart or that homeless person, it's almost guaranteed that they're from this area and oftentimes are lifelong from this area. Polk County doesn't have any shelters currently. The warming centers that we operate is about all that we have during the cold season. So people coming here are not finding services like you would find in an urban area. We say that every time we talk about homelessness to help dispel the myth that because there's a resource center or because there is a warming center that all of the homeless from Canada and Portland are coming here. And we have not seen that, and there's absolutely no data to support.
And I can tell you, just working with other pilot communities from the House bill in rural areas, every community has homeless individuals that are generated from their communities. It's kind of a fact of life. There is movement by some folks, but it's interesting the ubiquity of the recognition of the problem at home in one's community. And I think that myth is being demystified a bit, which is good.
We wanted to talk about the point in time count because it's relevant and it happened last week, and with what the governor is doing and with Polk County being included in one of the areas for potential funding or strategies. That's why we wanted to focus on that part. We'll do a more comprehensive report later on everything that this group is doing, Partners Aligned Toward Housing Solutions, with efforts to prevent homelessness in rural Polk County. That will take its own update. We're working on a strategic plan. Those things will be better talked about when we've had a couple more months.
I just want to mention one of the impetuses for the point in time count is it is a requirement. As you mentioned, it's a HUD requirement in our continuum of care. The Homeless Alliance from Marion and Polk County sort of runs it, but we really did our own innovation and made it meaningful, not only for the point in time requirements, but also for our path strategic plan. So we have more specific data that maybe would not be asked in the point in time count that's workable for a strategic plan. I just want to kind of put that out there, and that'll kind of creates a baseline for progress over time according to the continuum of care. So that's what the federal government uses for. It's a very imperfect methodology because it requires volunteers and service providers who they don't have capacity year after year to have consistency in the count. But the benefits is that we get face-to-face interactions with folks. We decide to stay in contact with those folks to connect them to services that they may be eligible for, et cetera. So thank you for making something kind of imperfect and a requirement into something workable and meaningful for our community. Yeah.
I think if you'll allow a couple more minutes, I'd love to hear from Amber. We have some updates on our service integration program, which has been the bedrock of social services in our county going on 30 years now. I think Amber has some updates to share about other areas that have now adopted it. We want to talk about that. But when you talk about the success of what we do, both internally at family and community outreach, it has to do with relationships. It's relationships with the programs within our department, it's relationships with every other county department, and then it's relationships with all of the other agencies, organizations, churches, and individuals that are doing work in the social service field. And that's where service integration brings those people together. We'll take just a couple of minutes and give you some updates on the teams and the other areas that are doing it, and come back to y'all another time for the rest.
Yeah, so our service integration team meetings, all 6 of them are back to in-person this year, which there were some concerns at the beginning of this fiscal year when we talked about that transition. We were afraid that we were going to see a decline in attendance, which has not been the case. We've actually welcomed 104 new partners around the physical table this year, which is really incredible.
New partners?
New partners, yeah. Our largest attended meeting so far this year has been our Dallas meeting. We had to extend our table a couple of times. We've had over 45 partners at that table this year, which is really great. In addition to our 6 meetings, we've added 1 virtual option. We're not doing our in-person meetings hybrid just because I think that takes away from the spirit of service integration, which is, that in-person connection and collaboration. But we do recognize that not everybody's able to make it to an in-person meeting. So we did add that virtual option, which has also been really well attended. That meeting is open to all 6 of our teams at one time, and fairly well attended. And those meetings, we focus mainly on just brief budget recaps from all of these 6 meetings. And then it's very heavy on partner announcements and that partner connection piece. We also are still doing our in-person coffee and connect networking event, which we implemented during COVID times because we missed seeing each other in person. And we like coffee and we really like donuts, which also is at every service integration coffee and connect. It's just a very casual way to get together in person, network with our partners. And then we're on a rotating schedule where we're visiting different agency locations each month for our coffee and connect locations, just so we have a way of seeing what our other partners are doing, where they serve people. And it's cool for people who refer to those agencies because they actually get to see where they're sending people to. We have served over 5,000 Polk County individuals this service integration fiscal year with over 120 funding requests. And we've spent just over $26,000, but leveraged over $80,000 so far this year. So like Stephanie said, we are seeing a lot of housing funding requests. So we're leveraging a lot with the Resource Center towards deposit assistance because that money doesn't really come from anywhere else. So we're paying for deposit assistance. We have paid for a couple of housing applications this year, but I would say that is the majority of what we're spending money on. And then like Brent alluded to, we are expanding the service integration model into other areas. So Sandiam service integration, super successful. Yamhill County service integration, super successful. Polk County service integration, great. And so, which prompted East Lynn County to say we want in. So I spent the last year just chatting with East Lynn County, telling them all about the service integration model, teaching them the ins and outs, and they hosted their first meeting in Lebanon this month on the 25th, which I was attended. I logged in at the first part of it, and they had, I think, over 40 people at that meeting. So it's pretty exciting.
Service integration program definitely was built, and the bedrock is Polk County, over 30 years of doing it. The county is the biggest supporter of the service integration program with paying for the staffing. The team funds there's 6 different funders, school districts, West Valley Hospital, the county, and then depending on the team, there's others. The reason I bring this up is it's very unique. In Yamhill County, it is supported by the CCO. In the Sandiam area, it's Sandiam Hospital. And in East Lynn County, it's
IHN CCO.
the CCO. They're paying for the staffing and the team funds. And some of those other areas have some leverage team funds as well. But it's interesting that the medical, the CCO, the healthcare world is seeing the advantage for their clients when people come together and work together. Clients have more access to services. So just wanted to share that. The team meeting.
Sorry to interrupt. Is Salem Health contributing at all? Salem, I know
West Valley.
West Valley is.
It is Salem Health. I'm not being political.
Yeah.
correct.
I hear you.
West Valley, that's always.
Right. Okay.
And they are under Salem Health, but
A Pacific Source directly, not.
that's correct.
Okay.
And the East Lynn Service Integration Team meets in Lebanon.
Lebanon.
There's
correct.
This is a great model for rural.
Mhm.
And so when we talk to folks about adopting the model, and we're really picky about our name,
Mhm.
if they're going to use the name service integration, we have a reputation that's important to us.
Mhm.
So they have to do about 90% of how we do it, and they have 10% leeway to do their thing. But there's been a couple places that tried to do service integration and they didn't do very good. And I went and met with them and said, call it something else because you're not doing service integration. And they did.
East Lynn County did also get a small grant from Samaritan Health. So they're partnering funds with Samaritan Health and IHN CCO.
Just curious, Amber, your assistance with Lynn County, is that kind of goodwill to spread this good model because it works?
Because it works and because we want to make sure they are running the program to fidelity. We don't want them
Gotcha.
to name service integration and just going completely rogue. So we're just making sure that we've had a couple of meetings with East Lynn County as well as partnered with the other service integration teams as well, just to make sure we're all kind of running things the same way. We meet quarterly to ensure that that's happening.
But to get to what you're saying, Commissioner, we don't charge people, if it becomes super staff intensive, we don't do it. But that's not been the case with folks that have wanted to learn on many of the programs that we do. Other folks want to know how to do it. Would it be great to have somebody come in and make a nice package of how we do social services and sell it? That would be great, but we don't have the time to do it now.
Yeah, it's not quite the model that.
So are your county government peers engaged in that process? Like in Lebanon?
It hasn't been as county driven out that way.
That's rings a bell. That's a problem. And I'm guessing the same perhaps across the river.
Do they send staff to the meetings at Marion and Yamhill through county staff? They do.
Mhm.
Do they contribute funds or are part of the overall, even we should be doing this? We have not seen that from county leadership.
Well, clearly, again, that for the record is the model here. You work for Polk County government.
Absolutely.
And so it's successful because of where you are, who you work for, and the resources that you have available through what we believe in. And that's, I think, a challenge. I'm not dissing anybody who's not engaging in it. But I've tried over my last 12 years to preach the gospel here about service integration and all the resource model that we have to other counties. And at commissioner level, it doesn't resonate the same. And so it's fascinating to me. There's reasons for it, but it's fascinating to me how others that work in the worlds that you work in aren't grabbing this and saying, hey, we should be doing this too, in partnership with CCOs, hospitals, et cetera. I have a couple of other questions for you. So I'm going to go backwards on my questions. So specific to service integration and resource needs. I think it's important for people to know how we're moving people into self-sustaining or self-sustaining capacity. And so do we have any resources that tell us folks that have had help? So you talk about 5,000 this fiscal year. Will we have any sense of how people become self-sustaining after having had this help?
Do you want to talk a little bit about NAV and how we
Yeah.
track people?
Yeah, so anytime that we are working with a client and requesting funds from service integration, we start with a really comprehensive intake with them. We ask about their income, we ask about their employment, whatever barriers are standing in their way of being self-sufficient. And for most of our funding partners, they require us to have some sort of sustainability plan. So that could be a job offer letter saying, hey, going back to work, regular income, whatever that looks like. All of that we track in our data system we call Need Nav, but we're able to see progress of people in that system, see when we helped them in the past. Most of our funding streams have a 12-month limit on how many times it can be accessed by a family or client. So we're able to track and see, are they engaged with us? Are they engaged with Dana's program, the VSO, and see what supports are being wrapped around that family, and also track when they exit our programs and where it left off. So when they leave our housing programs, we're able to say, we moved somebody in, here's their plan, and then they're closed off the services. So we are able to pull some reports that show how folks are doing and what we're connecting them to.
And I was going to say, and when people are coming to us with the housing needs primarily, all of those referrals and requests are coming from Stephanie's staff, because we want to make sure we're utilizing the resources that already exist before we're utilizing service integration funds.
Two important additions. When Stephanie mentioned using funding one time in 12 months, all of those are funding restrictions put upon us by funders and not us. If we have funds or through the service integration program, the team has the discretion to help a family more than once. But what we don't do, Commissioner Gordon, you can't pay rent and we helped you 3 times already and you have no plan to get a job and you're not going to pay rent next month either. We're not going to pay your rent this month. We need to target that money to Mr. Smith, who actually has a job offer letter. We're going to pay his rent this month or whatever it is. We do look at those things. And as far as the database we created ourselves, we're only in 1 year of full operation to be able to see across programs who's getting help. So after we have more than a year, we're going to have more comprehensive data for all of you based on all the programs that we do.
I think it's important to note, and I'm going to just channel the general public. I think that I'm in a different spot than you are. My responsibility is to tell people how successful we are. And I don't know that. Again, 12 years in this job, I don't know how successful we are. It bothers me that it appears our numbers of assistants you talked about in the Christmas program, those are way big numbers. And there's lots of folks out there saying, what? So, if they continue to grow, are we winning or are we not? And so that's the concern. And the question is, are we winning? Are we, and to Dana's point earlier, we'd like to work ourselves out of a job. And that's what I expect, that we would work ourselves out of that job. I know that's not reality, but the question is, are we tracking adequately? And I think you've kind of answered it. The answer, I get that there's qualifiers, and if you hit the end of the qualifiers, you don't get any more, but that's not answering the question about how many people are we actually getting back into a self-sustainability. And that is the goal, right? Is to get people back on their feet, get them back into where they can take care of themselves. They don't need the government to help them or the community to help them. And so I'm curious about that. If those numbers actually exist, or if we're making an effort to track it so we can show that we're winning. I say the same thing. Jeremy and I will argue over this on the homeless issues. But my statement simply is, if we're not showing progress to the community that pays for this, then we're failing. We have to show people that that whatever the strategy is we're using, and you guys have great strategy, but we have to show them that we're winning in that. And I don't know what kind of numbers that takes, And that takes me to additionally,
I can give you
The-
my
the-
analogy on that.
sure, go ahead.
And if you do it in a healthcare sort of analogy, we're the emergency room. We're the doctors and the nurses and the staff in the ER when somebody comes with a very traumatic injury, a car crash or a problem, and we solve that part there. But I don't know if they're going to make good health decisions the rest of their life. I don't know if they're going to make the changes necessary to not do that again. Because although we're up to like 33 FTE in our department, we do not have a single person that can case manage a family in the way that you're talking about to ensure success beyond the emergency room help that we give them in a time of crisis. To get to what you're doing, we would need case management. We would need folks that work with families beyond that triage in the ER, that we stay with them and we stay with them and we stay with them. The staff in the emergency room never see those people again once they discharge them, but the rest of the healthcare system should see them and should be working with them.
You know what they kept, if they came back to the emergency room.
We would know if they came
Yeah.
back based on the data we keep now. But obviously that would be our goal. I would love funding streams that would allow us to come beside families. It's never as easy as we'll just pay your rent this time and your life will be fine. We do budgeting classes,
Yeah.
we do financial literacy, we do parent education. We do school-based mental health supports. We try to wrap around with the limited staff and dollars we have. There's no way that it's enough to keep it going. That's another task, federal, legislative, whatever. Having people who maintain relationship with the same family beyond the emergency crisis would be, we would see results like no one would ever have imagined.
And then finally, I guess I'll make it my last question is, Amber, we talked about how many we counted in this pit count. But I fully expect that there is quite a number of those that you never see, that you don't know about. And so I imagine that there are folks, for example, say, I'm not getting on your bus.
Absolutely.
For a variety of reasons. First, their own property security, their pets, I'm sure their pets are coming. But do we have any sense of what you predict that the percent of the uncounted are in this process?
I think that predicting a number of the uncounted is really tough. I think that with this new method, we can only grow from here. In the information Brent emailed you, 73 of the 84 that are unsheltered we're counting as chronically homeless, meaning that they've been homeless for over a year or been homeless more than one time in their lifetime. So to me, that just screams these people haven't been counted before. So I know that the method that we're using works. It's just getting to those folks that like you said, they aren't going to trust us. They don't want to get on the bus. They maybe aren't going to want to take the survey. But I think partnering with service providers and food banks like we did this year is really going to be our best route to get that accurate number year after year.
No wrong door.
It's worth mentioning to you that the form that Amber created, which mirrors the HUD required information, is now our intake form in our department for everybody who's at risk or experiencing homeless. So we will track consistent data perpetually. That's how we're going to track it, not just in January on one night, but we will track that throughout the year. That's implemented starting next week. So again, it's one of those things where we have the idea, data is going to be forthcoming as we start tracking it. I don't want to guess at a number, Commissioner, that your intuition is right on. If we did this methodology and actually found, what's your number, 84? 84 unsheltered homeless in rural Polk County, and it's worth mentioning, this is only west of Highway 51. That's all we do. We are not doing anything east of the interchange of 51 and 22. That's a different count. It's easily going to be at least 40 more chronically homeless individuals than that we just didn't find that day or during that connect.
Leading up to the pit count, we had driven around all of rural Polk County just to see if we could find where people were camping. We found a few spots where there were quite a few RVs parked that obviously were in disrepair and they didn't have what they needed to be considered an actual shelter. And then on the day of the point in time count, we went out to those places and talked to code enforcement and those those RVs had been moved and those camps had been moved. So I have no guarantees of knowing that those people were actually counted. So I think next year, working a little bit more closely with our code enforcement and saying, hey, if there's a camp, do not move it until after that last week of January.
Yeah, and just on that data question, it's a challenge. HUD has certain variables or measures that they track. That's, period of time in homelessness, and the rate at which people exit homelessness, the rate at which people re-enter homelessness, how many people are entering for the first time. And the goal of the continuum is to have all those data sets there. We're just starting that baseline. So the next step of the PIT count, it's going to be aligned with the HMIS data, the homeless management information system data. So we can, and there's a lot of consternation about the PIT count, just in the homeless service community generally. So but the goal is to have a clearer, more holistic picture rather than one night of the year experience of how can we track these folks along the continuum. So that's the goal.
In closing on our end, we consider our department to be a prevention department. Every single thing we do, we're trying to prevent the bad thing from happening, not do the treatment part. It's other partners that do that part. We really have emphasis. Emphasis on prevention. If we can help a family with rent or with something so they don't get evicted and don't end up homeless, the cost return on that is immeasurable. On once you become homeless, the barriers. Matt and I were texting early this morning on a client that we're working on who's camping somewhere, and the barriers for that individual are almost insurmountable.
Yeah.
That there are no shelters and there's no places for a person to go. And if you think the answer is go to Salem, they have no room. They haven't had room for 20 years. So it's a very difficult thing. It's not something that you solve just like that, which is why we focus so heavily on preventing it.
That's right. And there are ways to measure that. People at imminent risk, we could track those folks, what services they do connect with. Anyway, this is a great conversation.
Thank you.
No, I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time, your innovation, your breaking down of silos, partnership, and taking the time to talk about it with us. I hope this works, Brent, to break it down a little bit.
I want to give kudos to not just this team. You have a report from all of the program leads. They all have done incredible work.
Yeah.
We also just want to take this last part and say we appreciate the support.
Yeah.
Counties don't do this. Polk County does this. And that's because you guys lead and allow us to do something different and unique. And I think it's going to pay dividends.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Good job.
Okay, finally, do we have any non-listed items that we need to address before adjournment?
Nothing for me, sir.
Okay, with that, we are adjourned at 10:27. Thank you.